Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile video. In this one, I wanted to talk about every single new SCOURGE Spectre. I'm going to leave a link in the description below to the timestamps, and you can click on the video to go through every single one of these Spectres. I'm going to go through what we've done with testing, how they behave, and if they're good enough. There's a couple of Spectres we need some more testing with, so do let me know in the comments below if you've tested these Spectres or if you tested them after watching this video, so we can make sure that all of us can get all the information of these new Spectres. There's a couple of them that I believe will have the possibility to become the new next meta Spectre. More of that when we get to them, but I will say this. I made a tweet showing how insanely good some of these Spectres look. Absolutely crazy how good they look. I will say this though, without an actual MTX on them, they didn't look really that good. But with the Stygian MTX I was using here, or the Ebony one, it actually looked absolutely beautiful. I have talked to Chris Wilson about adding these things as a purchasable MTX. He did say he was going to talk to the MTX team. Hopefully we'll see us being able to summon those type of Spectres in the future, because they looked so fucking good. Nothing beats it. So let's just dive into the video. So with this link here, which I will link in the descriptions below, you can see here that if they have a tag with an N, that means that they are not spectrable. If they have a Y, they are spectrable. So that means that this one, which is most likely an actual boss, is not spectrable. First one is the Demon Harpies. Now the Demon Harpies is actually the Spectres I just showed you from my Twitter profile, as I was linking over here. These are the Demon Harpies. I made a video recently, which I will link in the description below, with more details on the Demon Harpies. They are essentially going to be very hard to scale, and this is something I will be covering in this video, because the other video talks about the utility role because of this modifier here, which is their Elite Screech, which has a 9-second cooldown with a 4-second duration on the debuff. But the beam itself, or the screeching sonic waves, lasts for 4 seconds and refreshes itself. So once the cast is over, you'll have a full uptime of 8 seconds of the screech, and then the cooldown is 9 seconds after it has been casted. Obviously, this is not something they do consistently on cooldown, so it's not really that reliable to keep up 24/7. But they do increase physical damage taken. More of that in the video. I'll link that in the descriptions below. The problem is that this one is doing pure physical damage, hitting consistently with small increments. Their other attacks is a animation speed fire. They also teleport around all the time with a dash slash. And all these damage numbers, they are similar to Redemption Knights we've seen in the past, with more damage, with less attack damage. And then they're also doing a conversion. Now the Redemption Knights does cold. These bad boys do conversion to fire. The problem is obviously that the Screech doesn't have any conversion to fire, which makes them very, very hard and awkward to scale for the sake of damage output. I think they can do really well in the early stage progression of maps, like maybe even up to yellow tiers, before they're going to start to fall off pretty heavily. Again, I haven't tested anything specific when it comes to clearing with these other than that, because I think that with more Spectres, the Screech actually does very well in the early stage leveling. I will say this though, they have a ridiculous amount of HP and they actually survive during leveling. I was playing my Dark Pact build, which I'll make a video about later, and I was using these Spectres just because they looked cool, okay? And they never died. So it was pretty cool actually, and this was during the actual campaign. Alright, we're just going to move on to the next Spectre, and that is the Demon Herder. Demon Herder are actually pretty cool. They look pretty cool as well. I don't have a screenshot of them right now. So basically the problem with these Spectres is that they have two different abilities. One with a Elite Vomit, as they're called, with a 12-second cooldown, which you can see here. They have a ridiculous amount of HP and 100% of their life as energy shields. They're super tanky. They also have the Demon Elite Beam Nuke, which is doing physical damage with a small conversion into a fire. The problem I had with these was that the coverage or area coverage of these abilities didn't feel good enough. They are able to use Spell Echo. The problem is that both of these have a decent amount of cooldown, and the way they behave between these cooldowns didn't feel like it was going to be very good, and they have a tendency of actually melee swinging sometimes, which makes them quite inferior to use for the sake of clearing. They look amazing though. I think they work really well, specifically with their tankiness for the early acts, but I mean honestly, in maps and later, you're going to have such a bad clear speed with these, and they don't have really any significant good single targets. Next one up would be the Demon Imp. The Demon Imp is actually pretty cool. They have this little fodder projectile which deals physical damage, similar to Kitava's the red beam he puts on the ground. It kind of looks like that. They are not very tanky, but they're decently sturdy despite being a small imp. The problem with them is that there's almost no area coverage or projectile hitting would be functional for the ability they're using to be remotely good. So the laser is just absolutely dog shit. Yeah, that's all I have to say. They're just generic shit minions because the numbers doesn't add up to be competitive. The next one up would be the Demon Beast. Demon Beast has a melee animation and they have a baseline damage of 2.3k with a decently shit amount of HP, but okay armor, I guess. Evasion's actually alright. But the problem is that their attack is absolute dog shit. Their damage numbers does not add up to be anywhere near what we would consider to be competitive in the Spectre meta at all. So we're just going to move on from the Demon Beasts. We have the Demon Ghast. Same thing here, 2000 damage. They have 100% of their life as energy shield, so they have that going for them. However, they're in a situation where the damage is just way bad. Way bad. So here we have the Ravenous Spectres. In this case, we have the Ravenous Bloodshaper. Ravenous Bloodshaper, they are sitting on a Flesh Elite basic proj, which is coming out from their Elite Blood Orb. And then they have a Barrage, they have a Elite Spike Barrage, which is having the Hellscape Flesh Elite basic proj. Like what I'm saying is probably not making any sense to most of you guys, so I'm just going to say that they have two different abilities. One is a Barrage ability, which is pretty alright. The problem is that it's a 7-second cooldown, making it pretty shit to scale with. And then they have an ability called the whatever, and it's a 9-second cooldown, which shoots out the orbs, which is then exploding for a ridiculous amount of base damage. And it's better. It's the best case with this. The best part of this is that it's pure physical damage. You can convert it, you can percent as extra it, you can do so much with this, and it's absolutely disgusting. But it has a 9-second cooldown, which prevents us from scaling this in a proper way. They have a large percent of their life as extra energy shield, so they are really sturdy with a huge chunk of armor, but their evasion is gone. So basically, they're acting similar to the previous monster we looked at with the armor scaling, but they also have a chunk of their life as extra energy shield. But honestly, I don't think they're going to do very well. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but that's just the theoretical approach to this and what the tests that we have done. So moving on to the Ravenous Macerators. Now, the Ravenous Macerators... basically, they have a shitload of abilities, and I'll try to cover everything. They have a decent amount of HP. They're pretty tanky, actually. Their armor is ridiculously high with 32.5k, and they're okay evasion, I guess, but their armor is just skyrocketing high. These guys are tanky, okay? And they actually have proper physical damage mitigation on them. They also have a base damage of 3.1k and hits like a fucking truck. Now, back in Diablo 2, we, Necromancer and Summoners, we used a guy that I keep forgetting the name of from Mephisto runs that applies Crushing Blow. These guys basically look like them, but they've been on a diet for 2 years and just lost all the fat. So that's basically how they look. They're melee, and they have a bunch of different abilities. So instead of going through all of it, I'll just explain what they do. They have a sort of a cleave ability that they use sometimes. They have a slam combination where they hit the ground, I think it is 2 times, and then on the third one, they, instead of hitting from the top down, they hit from below and up, like an uppercut, and shoots out a cascade instead, as their third combo slam hit. And then they have a weird cleave approach, and then they have normal white swings. They do a stupid amount of base damage, which allows you to properly scale these for single target, but because of the way their fucking behavior is when it comes to their the bonking on the slam, I'm not even sure if that's going to be multi-strikeable, but it's not very good when it comes to clearing, because they're gated and locked in place for such a long time. Even if a endgame boss is mobile and it moves away, they're gonna sit there and slam on the ground, thinking they're cool, whilst the boss is actually, 2 miles away. They look good. I think they could be scaled to single target with some speed modifiers, but I'm not sure how they're going to be for the sake of clearing. I didn't feel that they were good, but they're tanky as a motherfucker, okay? Next one up is Ravenous Next one up is the Ravenous Homonculus. The Ravenous Homonculus, they are melee with a bad amount of HP, juicy armor, but low base damage. So we're going to look at what they actually do. Now they have a speed fire, which is a default attack, and this is just the generic fire conversion attack. Like you see the less attack damage, and then you have more damage. This is something you will see all the way since the Redemption Knights was the meta. They have a leap ability, which has a 3-second cooldown, which is actually really, really good. This means that they're going to be effectively on top of enemies, but due to their lack of damage, they're not going to be something that we will be looking into. They do have an extra damage on impact with a leap, but it's not enough when they have a base damage of 2.2k, so we're just going to have to move on. Ravenous Brute is the next Spectre, and these Ravenous Spectres, they have a decent amount of HP. They have juicy armor. The problem is that their base damage here is absolutely dog shit. They get some generic melee strike range and more attack damage on a fodder slam. There's just nothing to look at here to make these actually viable to compete in the Spectre meta in the current state of the game. So we're just going to say bye-bye Ravenous Brute. Or as we say in Sweden, Horde. Ravenous Digester would be the next one, and these guys, they have a low amount of HP, but they do have a percent of that as extra energy shield. They have like almost no armor. Their evasion is a little higher than you normally see. Base damage is dog shit again. And the problem with this is that they're using out these pustule abilities, and it's just a base damage, a physical damage per second. Now the thing is with this is they're using flesh pustules, 5 additional projectiles, 5 projectiles in a circle, which deals physical damage, and these flesh pustule fluid that it lands on the ground is physical damage over time. The problem with the physical damage over time is that we lack a lot of sources to scale things like this from minion builds, which means that they will be very, very, very weak compared to many other minions. I'm happy to be proven wrong in this, but the problem with a lot of dot scaling from minions is that due to lack of scaling actual dots for minions, it just makes these fall flat, even if they had a very extremely high baseline to work very well. I don't know. It's just I will say this though, with all of these Spectres with energy shield based over their life, the unique armor Fleshcrafter, let's see if I have it here actually. The Fleshcrafter could be something we maybe want to look into to some degree, because but the problem with this is that we lose that extra Spectre from the Delve chest, right? Because it converts % of their life to maximum energy shield, and then they get chaos damage doesn't bypass minion energy shield, but they get fast start of energy shield recharge, and they ignore monster elemental resistances. The problem is that I don't think this is a good thing. I know a lot of people have been asking me about this, so I just want to have a little bit of an outlier when it comes to talking about the Fleshcrafter and why I don't think it's going to be good. We lose an additional Spectre. A lot of these minions have conversions to fire and lightning. I just don't think it's going to be that good because a lot of them doesn't have conversion, and the physical minion meta is currently the state of bliss right now. So that's what we're looking at. Next Spectre, Ravenous Misshapen, or if you want to meme around, it's called Misshapen. Okay, Ravenous Misshapen is actually, and most likely, the Spectres that I'm mostly hyped about. They have 100% of their life as extra energy shield, as seen here, 76237, 76237. They have almost no evasion, they have a shit stain armor, and they have a base damage of nothing, but they are casters. Or are they? So our tests that we have done with the Ravenous Misshapen proves that they have a arc ability, which says an arc of lightning stretches from the caster to a targeted enemy and chains on to other nearby enemies. Each time the main beam chains, it will also chain to a second enemy, but that secondary arc cannot chain further. This is a lie. That doesn't happen. There is no chain. They have 0 chain. Looks cool. It's like a yellow arc, but if you socket chain support with them, woo, the chain, it chains, and the distance it chains is pretty goddamn far. They have a 10% chance to shock enemies increase on these. The base damage is pretty low. Pretty low. But the main problem with these is that they are going to be compared with the current meta of Spectres, which is for clearing FAS, but if you want to have the well-rounded and actual boss damage in dealing Spectres, you're going to go Slave Drivers. They are essentially the same as Slave Drivers, but these are scaling from the arc, which means you want to use a chain to clear with them. Slave Driver goes with AoE scaling, which works very well baseline on Fearsome Force, but most importantly, Slave Drivers are ridiculously aggressive. It's like somebody stole their ice cream and they went on a murderer's rage kind of fucking aggressive. Instead, they have a tendency of actually melee attacking enemies when they get too close. This is a problem we had it for a couple of weeks during the Syndicate operatives when they moved over from spellcasting to attacking. I'm not sure if they're going to fix this. The problem is that if the enemies are too close, they start melee swinging, and that's when they do this shit stain damage and do like no damage output whatsoever. But if they don't do that, you keep them away from the enemies to actually shoot their arc. Now, for clearing, they have the potential to be better than slave drivers, but single target, I haven't gotten any confirmation other than that the AI is just straight up worse, which makes slave drivers superior for single target because it's more reliable damage output. But do let me know in the comments below if you guys done more testing than that. We've had a lot of help from our community, the global channel 6666 as well, that we're doing this with. So let me know in the comments below if you guys done any more testings with these. Next one up would be a Bone Roa. Now, Bone Roas, we're going to go through this real quick. They're basically the same thing as we've seen before, and they're going to, from previous Roas, they're just, no, not even worth looking at. We're just going to move on. That's how bad they are. They have the generic charge stuff, and as you can see here, they've always been available, like the Fetty Pool libraries. These are old school. We don't even have to go into it. However, we have Ancient Bone Stalker, and Ancient Bone Stalkers are basically the same thing. It's the same process we've seen. The problem with these is that some of these specters are essentially just a buffed version of what we've seen before, and these have shit stain damage and are just terrible. Same thing as the Bone Roas. They're just complete trash. There's nothing to look at. So these are like generic monsters that we've already have, that they also have inside the Scourge encounter, Scourge realm, if you will, but they're not a new monster. So which ones are new? And that's when we come to the last segment here. Now, Pale Angel, I do have an image on the Pale Angels. Pale Angel is actually from this post here, and Boobas. They look fucking amazing, actually. They have hands going out of their bodies. They have an amazing personality, and I love their horns. And they're absolutely beautiful is the word I was looking for. So I think they actually look really good. I think the Demon Harpies looks better, though. So what the fuck is up with the Pale Angel? Now, the Pale Angel will have a couple of different things happening. First off, they have a single bolt impact hitting for a pretty ridiculously good damage number, but the problem with this is that they're not always doing it. They're not super aggressive. It only hits one target. Doesn't seem like it's chainable. And then they have this spammable bolt, and I think it's okay for single targets, but their clear is just bye, sir. It's terrible. Okay, it's absolutely terrible. Then they have an attack that is called the, I'm going to read it out for you. GS Hellscape Pale Elite Omega Beam. It's a pretty fitting name because it has a top end damage of an 84 monster of 22,000 base damage. Now, what this means is that they get scaled, and these numbers are a reflection of how these specters are as monsters. This is why you're most likely getting one shot in Scourge mechanics. It's gonna take Reddit about a week before they bitch and moan about this, and they're going to nerf it. I am very confident they're gonna nerf this. This number allows us to, at a medium budget specter build, most likely be able to consistently one-shot any in-game boss. That's how much damage these are doing. I'm pretty confident they're gonna nerf it. However, the specters will be absolutely dog shit when it comes to clearing. The beam is a cooldown of 6 seconds, and you can spell echo it. Yes, it happens twice. Yes, it's ridiculous. Their tankiness is also pretty much off the charts, especially for Caster Spectre. 125,000 HP with 100% of their life as extra energy shield, so they will pretty much never be able to die. It's just ridiculous how cool these are. They look cool, they behave really well, their AI can be sorted with Predator when it comes to aggressiveness, but again, their clear is just dog shit. There's no clear. Every 6 seconds you clear well, but that's about it. So they're going to be used for single target. If you can combine these with maybe mage skeletons or another build, then it might work pretty well. We're going to move on. We have Pale Seraphim. Pale Seraphim looks pretty all right. Actually, speaking of looks, I will mention this when it comes to the Ravenous Misshapen. they look like fucking dog shit. And I mean, I don't mean that as the saying dog shit. I mean that they actually look like turd from an actual dog. That's how they look. Moving on. Pale Seraphim have a base damage of 3.1k with 142,000 HP, 27k armor with 10.8 evasion. These guys have a stabby sky stab, which is a pretty fun name, but they have abilities with an 8-second cooldown and a 6-second cooldown, and they have a bit of a cleave. The problem with these numbers, this is low, especially when their damage modifiers here have the Sky Stab has 100% more attack damage, but you also seen what we saw before with the conversion monsters having 200% more damage. But in this case, they have a 100% more attack damage, but this is the Elite Sky Stab, and we can just use our detective glasses and realize that that would be this happening, and that's an 8-second cooldown before this triggers in, which means that the damage will actually be rather low, even if the base damage looks decent enough. Their abilities is cutting you off. The cleave might make them able to do pretty well on clear. Now, I will say this, though, I haven't tried the Pale Seraphim yet, so feel free to do so and let me know in the comments below so we can see if anybody tested them so the rest of the community can find out. My theoretical approach to these is that I don't know how the web will behave. It would be interesting to see if the web behaves similar to the screeching from the Demon Harpies, if they put a debuff to increase damage taken, or if it's just movement speed decreasement. But it does seem like the web is actually doing damage for 3 seconds as a dot, which means that it is very likely that this is another one of those physical damage increase taken modifiers. If that's the case, then these specters could do rather well theoretically, despite the low damage number. It's a 6-second cooldown with a 3-second duration. If it stacks, you have 4 or 5 specters, you might actually be able to keep that up to some degree, and I think that could do really fucking well. So let me know if you guys, any of you guys have tested these. They are rather interesting, but the damage number feels low with these modifiers, but I think that it might work well. The question is, what happens in single target? Well, this web is going to happen, and their Sky Stab is going to happen, but they have, outside of these cooldowns, they are going to cleaving. They're going to cleave, and there's nothing in the cleave that has bleed or anything like that, and it's a 50% less attack damage modifier on top of that, so they just get some AoE. So I'm not sure how well they'll do for actual single target, but they look interesting. Let me know if you tested them in the comments below, and we're going to move on to the next one. Pale Seraphim, that would be the Pale Cherubim. Pale Cherubim. Another specter that I have only seen in action. I've not tested it myself. 100% of life is extra energy shield. They don't have that juicy defenses, but because of the 100 extra energy shield, they're actually very, very tanky. Low damage, but these guys have a animation speed melee. Striking foes are down with a powerful blow, and then you have the Hellscape Pale Hammerhead, which is projectiles pierces all targets. Now, the problem with these specters is that I haven't tested them myself. I haven't seen them in action, and looking at the numbers, tankiness is all on par. Damage looks low, but they seem to be having the spell projectile. Now, the spell projectile doesn't seem like there's any cooldown, but they cast on a 1.166 seconds with a decent amount of physical damage, and it pierces all targets. Now, what I can see from this is that it looks like they're going to be a decent clearing specter, but I do fear their single target capability because this number is not going to add up on a cast time of 1.166 to do decently versus single target, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. But theoretically, I don't think they're going to do well at all on single target, but clearing could potentially be a good way to play it. Now, with that in mind, you could run specters together with skeleton, like the Lich Queen build guide that I have. There's a link in the descriptions below to my build guides. You can do specters together with golems, and all of these things can actually be supplemented on the single target front if they would do well in clearing. Because right now, Syndicate Operatives, despite Country of Belief, is actually really good for clearing. It's either that or FAS specters because of the high base cold damage, right? We got 2 more specters to go through. We got the Pale Servitor, and then we have the Pale Virtue. Pale Servitor has a decent amount of HP, but not very good. But because of the lack of decent armor and evasion, they're actually not that tanky. Base damage pretty goddamn low. And then we're going to look at how they behave. Now, with these numbers, I can tell you that they look like they're going to be casters. And if they're not casters, then they have a problem. So we have melee animation speed. There's a striking foes. Okay, so they look like they're going to be a melee minion. And then we have a dash, which is a teleport or mobility skill with an 8-second cooldown. And then we have a dash swipe, and then they have a Darkman Charge Explosion. I don't know if this is going to actually explode the specters and actually kill it, because this is Dogman Charge Up and then Dogman Charge Explosion, or if they have a 10-second cooldown summoning something that explodes. I haven't seen these, so I'm actually not sure. Please tell me in the comments below so we can actually verify this, because this number is ridiculously good, but this number is not. 10-second cooldown for that. no thank you. If I want to have a big chunk damage, I'd go with the Pale Angels. Other than that, tanking is not really anything to shout over, or, you know, nothing to cry over either, because they don't seem to be that good. So we're going to move on to the Pale Virtue and how these are looking. These are the last new Spectres, and hope you guys have enjoyed the video so far. If you have, hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Pale Virtue, they have nothing extra as energy shield, 80k live, 25k energy shield, evasion on the OK front. 2.2k base damage is terrible. And then we look at their actual attacks. Okay, they are attacking, which means that this number does matter, and then they're shit. Spider dodge left, spell movement, okay. And then they have a spider dodge right. To the left, to the left. Okay, so we know that these guys can dance. Okay, right. So, right, we have dancing specters now. Anyways, I will leave a link in the descriptions below to all of these by linking this link here, the Scourge monsters, so you can take a look at them yourself. Let us know in the comments below if you guys have tested any of these specters or what your take is on the new specters. And so we can help each other out here to get to the point where we have tested all of them to see if there's any competitive minions for the sake of comparing slave drivers versus and as well as the Frost Auto Scouts, right? Slave drivers is going to be insane this league. But I'm excited. I think they look really good. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, I have talked to Chris Wilson. Hopefully we'll see in the future some MTX purchases so that we can actually have our specters look like the Demon Harpies or Pale Angels. Or whichever other specters you think looks best. So let me know which specters you think looks the best in the comments below as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video, which is going to be about Dark Pact and the league start that we've done with it, which has went pretty goddamn well. So stay tuned for that one. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content. I've told you like 5 times already. I keep losing track of how many times I told you. So I'm assuming you've done it already. I'm just going to say thank you. Until next time, stay safe and keep rocking.